Welcome to week 19. Money and money crisis. For day 1, we'll look at some of the portraits. Scenario 1. Husband and wife's credit cards debts have run out of control. Husband can't get wife to stop spending. The wife also can't get the husband to stop spending. So, husband and wife are constantly overwhelmed with bills they cannot pay. The husband wants a counselor to talk some sense into the wife. Wife wants a counselor to talk some sense into the husband. Scenario 2. Sambil just lost his job due to downsizing of the company. He's trying to find work, but the job market is tough. He's struggling with believing God's care for him is sufficient in the midst of this crisis. Scenario 3. Husband of 20 years ran off with another woman. After all the negotiating between the lawyers, the wife is left with virtually nothing. She hasn't worked for years. How will she make ends meet now? We go to some definition and key ideas. Money has to be mastered, or it will master us. A person who comes for help regarding money, or the person you are helping regarding money, will need advice about handling the difficult financial situation. But he or she also needs something deeper, and an understanding that amid the difficulty, God still cares and will meet his or her needs. It may be important to help the person you're helping make some lifestyle changes that can help with crisis. You might encounter some people who wants help but does not want to change anything. Try to persuade them. If the crisis is the result of personal irresponsibility, the person you're helping needs to make changes that will keep this crisis from happening again. Jesus talked more about money than about any other single topic. Why? Because Matthew 6:21 says, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." We'll now read Matthew 6:19 to 24, the context of this. Verse 19. "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." The eye is the lamp of the body. So, if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. In verses 19 to 21, Jesus commands his followers, if they do not need that possession in the course of serving the Lord, why go to such an extent to expend so much effort to grab that possession that would not be used in serving the Lord? Wealth in the ancient world, as often still today, regularly consisted of precious metals and even cloth. Loss of wealth due to attacks of moth and rust were in view, especially in the hot, sandy Palestinian climate. The danger of theft applies to almost all kinds of valuable in every time and place. Many of us will lose our wealth sooner than we want or expect, by death, if not by theft. So what do you do in the short time span that the wealth is within your control or management? Rather than accumulating material wealth for its own sake, people should work for spiritual riches that is not vulnerable to loss and death. Even if people succeed in safeguarding all their earthly riches, in the end, they really cannot control how long they live to hold on to those wealth. Now, what does it mean to store spiritual treasures? Spiritual treasures should be defined as broadly as possible. Everything that believers can take with them beyond the grave. I mean, it might be good deeds, holiness of character, obedience to all of God's commandments, winning souls for Christ, disciples nurtured in faith, loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, etc. In this context, however, storing up treasures focuses particularly on the compassionate use of material resources to meet others' physical and spiritual need, in keeping with the priorities of God's kingdom. Brothers and sisters at Ashwood, who are you helping with your resources? Are you accumulating resources so that you can help others better? Many of you have resources more than you or your family ever need. What are you doing with them? Against the potential objection that material prosperity has no effect on one's spiritual condition, verse 21 reminds us that one's affections are inherently drawn to one's treasure. This does not imply that rich people cannot be Christians, although the first century Christians knew only a small number of them. It does, however, imply that riches bring grave dangers, not least of which is the extra anxiety of having to protect one's possessions, the multiple portfolios to manage. To avoid those dangers, rich Christians must be characterized by generosity in giving and meticulous stewardship in using money for the Lord's work. Some would say that you can do more of God's work without money, with money than without money. It might be helpful to visit someone in a hospital and bring some fruits along where suitable. But traveling there and purchasing those fruits require prior accumulation of money. That's why you can do more good with money than without. Without some accumulation of capital, no new ventures can be easily undertaken. The words assume that the treasures are hoarded. They are prized for their own sake, not put to work to create jobs, produce goods. Nevertheless, most of all, people who are able to save and invest experience the temptation drastically to overestimate their genuine needs, or try to secure their future against all calamity. Meanwhile, the truly destitute of the world continue to grow poorer. That is, for many of you, you are richer than you think. Verses 22 and 23 talks about the heart. The heart forms the center of one's affection and commitments. The eyes enable the whole person to see. Good and bad eyes probably parallel a good and bad heart, and thus refer respectively to storing up treasures in heaven versus storing them up on earth. Verses 22 and 23 therefore restate the truth of the previous paragraph, that the way people handle their finances affects every other part of their lives, either for good or for bad. And if that which should lead to good actually causes evil, then sayang lah, it's a pity. In 624, this verse is for those who might think that they can accumulate both spiritual and earthly treasures. Jesus replies that there are only two options, and they must choose between competing loyalties. The word master suggests a slave owner who required total allegiance. People could not serve two masters in the way in which people today often work two jobs. Money is more literally mammon, referring to all of a person's material resources. Of course, many people try to cherish both God and mammon, but ultimately only one will be chosen. There will be a time to come where you have to choose one. This time will come. The other will be hated, even if only by neglect. The words love, hate in Semitic thought are often roughly equivalent to choose or not choose. What is the grave danger to society today as far as this topic is concerned? Many observers have sensed that the greatest danger to Christianity is not prevailing ideologies, cults, humanism, but rather the all-pervasive materialism of our affluent culture. We try so hard to create heaven on earth and to throw in Christianity when convenient as another small addition to the so-called good life. But here in today's passage, Jesus proclaims that unless we are willing to serve Him wholeheartedly in every area of life, but particularly with our material resources, we cannot claim to be serving Him at all. See you for day 2.